Hi, how you doing, and welcome back to a video on the channel. What we have for you today is our wildcard video going into game week 5 of FPL. Some of you might have used the wildcard in the international break. Some of you might be waiting until game week 6, but you might also be thinking of getting ahead of the curve with making some transfers early to avoid any price rises or falls. Or you maybe just want to use your wildcard in game week 5. You've seen enough of what you wanted to see so far this season, so hopefully this video will help you out. If you are new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. The support has been awesome all season, and we have just made it past 200 subscribers, so thank you very much for that as well. This wildcard team is rated 94 rated on Fantasy Football Hub as well, so shout out to them. And it probably is the highest rated wildcard team we've done so far this season, so let's go check it out. So we're going to start with the goalkeepers and the defence, and for me, I'll start with Raya and Saliba. Now, I know they've got Man City next, but there's still a chance to do well against Man City, right? It's not a given that they're going to lose. And yeah, the clean sheet might not be super likely, but it is still possible. And all those Arsenal-Man City games have been pretty tight as it is. So Arsenal will go there to try and shut up shop and play quite defensively. So the clean sheet, I don't think, is completely out of the question. But if you're wildcarding in this week, you also want to be looking for future game weeks as well, and by doing this and getting a double Arsenal defence in now, it also saves you from making transfers in future game weeks when you're probably going to want them in your team. We'll go to Trent next, and people will be keen to knee-jerk off Liverpool after the loss to Forest this weekend, but you do still need someone from there. They are a top 3 team in the league, in my opinion, and Trent does represent fantastic value for me. At 7 million, I think you compare him to the 7 million midfielders or even the rest of Liverpool's attackers, and I think he just has the best value, and he gets points both on the defensive and the offensive side of the ball. I've put Leif Davis in the starting position in defence. Now, I'm not going to read them all out, but Ipswich's fixtures, you really need to check them out because up until game week 16, they are phenomenal. They're probably the best run of fixtures in the whole league. He actually got 18 assists in the Championship last season. He's already got one so far this season, and he's got a clean sheet in Game Week 4 as well. I think 4.5 million, he's such a great pick. I just don't see why you wouldn't get him in. I know that Ipswich aren't going to keep clean sheets, but let's face it, not many teams are keeping clean sheets, and I think with that being the case, saving money in defence and going for someone like a 4.5 million defender in Leif Davies really allows you to put that money into your attackers and your midfielders. On the bench, we've got 2 4 million defenders. Now, we've kind of needed to go for this because of the money we've invested elsewhere. But, if you ask yourself, how much have you needed your bench so far this season? Me personally, with my team, I've not needed it at all. I don't think I've ever had someone come in off the bench. I know some of you might be having it this week because you might have brought in João Pedro, for instance, and someone's coming off your bench. But generally speaking, you don't really need your bench that much at the moment. And even if you did, how many of you starting 11 this week scored 1 or 2 points? Probably quite a few, you would say 3 or 4. And so for me, if you've got a player coming off your bench who's scoring you 1 or 2 points in a game week, that's not a huge hindrance, especially if, your bench players are 4 million. You've not got a load of value there. If they were more expensive, you would want them in your starting 11 anyway. So someone like Bednarek, Southampton actually have Ipswich, Bournemouth, Leicester, Everton and Wolves in the next 7 games. So if you needed to start him, you could do that. He's actually played 90 minutes 3 times and 80 minutes once in the 4 games so far. So for Southampton might not be a great defence, but he's an okay player to put into your starting 11 on the odd occasion. Same with Van den Berg. He actually played 90 minutes against Man City this weekend, and any 4 million playing defender is worth a shout to me. Brentford have great fixtures as well. After Spurs, they've got West Ham, Wolves, Ipswich, Fulham, Bournemouth, Everton and Leicester in the next 8 games. So if he keeps starting, they're 2 great picks for as cheap as you can get. So they're great value and great fixtures. Into the midfield we go, and we're going to start with Bowen. And I feel like no one's really talking about Jared Bowen at all, but he does have 3 attacking returns in his last 3 games, including against Man City. And he's got Chelsea, Brentford, Ipswich, Spurs, Man United, Forest and Everton all in the next 7. And they're good defences to play. So he has the great combination of good form and good fixtures, and he's only 6% owned. So he is a real differential moving forward, and it's not like he's someone who we think could score points in the future and is yet to score. He's already doing it, and he's really going under the radar. I think largely because players like Jota and Diaz, if you were going to make a transfer up till now, you probably would have got them in ahead of Bowen, but maybe Jared Bowen needs a bit more attention. Next, we're going to talk about Eze, and although Palace have mixed fixtures, he has a great price point, and he is the main focal point of everything Palace do. He's been unlucky for returns so far this season, but I think, get him in for a few game weeks. If you don't like it, you can always jump off him maybe for someone like a Smith Rowe. I know Fulham don't have great fixtures, but there are cheaper midfielders that you could go for, and you might want someone like a Smith Rowe or a Rodgers in now, and it'll save you 1 million, maybe 1.5 million there that you could even invest into your defence. If you don't agree with how I've set up my defence, there's an option where you could do something different. Semenyo from Bournemouth, they do have tough fixtures, but he is in great form and he is destined for 90 minutes. We're actually recording this on Saturday night, so the Bournemouth Chelsea game is still going on as it stands. So as long as there's no injuries, I still see him as a great option. He's played 90 minutes so far in every game, and he's a key part of their attack. He's a bit like Eze. If Bournemouth score, you think Semenyo's probably going to be involved. Rounding out the midfield, we're going to go with Saka, and just like the Arsenal defenders, you've kind of just got to stick with him for the Man City game. And, all you'll hear after that game is triple Arsenal. That's what everyone who you'll be watching videos on will be saying, get in triple Arsenal now. You're getting ahead of the curve by doing that, and you're sorting out any price rises or any price drops. But there is still a chance that Saka scores against Man City. I think Man City are yet to keep a clean sheet so far this season. So, Arsenal scoring is not completely out of the question. Into the attackers, and I've gone with Watkins, Visser and Haaland. Now, for Visser, it was kind of between Mbeumo and him, but he is $1 million cheaper than Mbeumo, and there are some good midfield options. The options in attack, they're not quite as consistent or quite as appealing as the midfielders seem to be. And at 6.1 million, I think I'd rather have Visser and $1 million in the bank than Mbeumo and $1 million less, because that $1 million can really push your player's value elsewhere. That's the difference between a Gvardiol and a Trent, say, in defence. So I think that value is worth it, and he's already got 4 returns in 4 games so far this season, and we've also already talked about how good Brentford's fixtures are, so I do think you need a Brentford attacker. For me, I would go with Visser. So Haaland, we don't need to spend ages talking about him. He's got the consistency in minutes. He's got the consistency in performance. I wouldn't have any other Man City players in my team at the moment, just because they're A, not keeping clean sheets, and B, you really don't know who's going to be playing when. Haaland, he's going to get 90 minutes, or at least he's going to start and probably get 80. Maybe as the Champions League comes in, you might get a bit more variance in when he comes off. But that is the same of any player for a Champions League team or a team playing in Europe. That's what you're going to be getting when you get those players in. But for me, he is a must-have. He's someone who you're going to be captaining every week. I don't really see why you wouldn't. So rounding out the attack, we're going with Watkins. Now, he was in our wildcard team last week, and he's just scored 2 goals. I don't see why you wouldn't have him in your team this week. I think he's going to hit the ground running a bit more now. He's got his goals under his belt. I think the next 2 fixtures look great as well. And then, as we said before, good fixtures create good form. He'll hopefully take that form into future game weeks. So as we said at the start, the team rating is 94%. And shout out to Fantasy Football Hub for their team rater tool. It's a great rating. Now, we always say that mid to low 90s is really where you want to be, because there's so many variables in football. You don't really, you can't take into account all the factors just in the data. You need a balance of both. But I think 94% is a great rating to have for this team. It shows that it's quite well rounded, and the value is actually 100 million. And that is if you were buying in players from scratch. So if you already own Haaland and you had him in at 15 million, you'll save 0.2 million getting in this team. This team value is if you didn't own any of them. So it's still, hopefully, almost everyone could afford it. So the strengths for this team are it spreads the value. You've got a couple of big hitters, say, but you've not got all your money tied up in one player. And I think the downside of having 3-4 big hitters in your team is that you have to have cheap players elsewhere in your starting lineup that you have to play. And for me, I think that's all right when your big hitters are coming in with loads of points. But those cheap midfielders, those cheap forwards, they're cheap for a reason. They don't score as consistently. So by having a few more mid-price sort of selections in your team, hopefully you can get those consistent returns. And I know we've got Watkins, Haaland and Saka, but Watkins is someone who's really easy to move off after the next couple of game weeks to a cheaper striker, and then maybe you could upgrade elsewhere if you did want a big hitter in midfield to go alongside Saka. I also think the fixtures are good for the long term, and it kind of ties in with the weaknesses is that there are some tough fixtures in this game week. You know, you look at the midfield fixtures and you've got Man City, Liverpool, Man United, Chelsea, who we're playing from the midfield. If you can just ride it out this week, this team will be good for the future. Now, you could also say that there's a weak bench, but we talked about that previously. I don't really see much of an issue with having a weak bench. I think you want your value in your starting 11. That's where you want your money to be. And having a cheap bench, it doesn't really bother me too much because they're going to be on your bench. I think when you want a bench boost, that's a different conversation. But for now, we're not talking about that. We're talking about a good wildcard team for the future game weeks. So let me know what you think. I think it's quite good, but we've all got opinions, so I'm happy to hear yours. Is there anyone that you think I should get in instead of someone that's in this team? Is there anyone that you think I should get out of this team? I'm personally not wildcarding, but if you are, hopefully that's helped you out. Please do subscribe. The support is awesome, and we are a small channel trying to grow, so it does really make a difference, and I will see you in the next one.